Freak Out? Man, I tell you what, that song was so hot back in the day. I don't care if your favorite artist was Hank Williams, you wore a cowboy hat and rode around on a horse. You got up and danced.
I like to be educated, but I'm so frustrated.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Shout out to all of the people that support this channel, the members and the subscribers. Hey, I love you guys. Keep watching the videos, keep supporting the channel so we can keep doing what we're doing, and all of your suggestions are considered. Now, let me tell you something. We're going to get into Chic. They had this song back. They had a couple of songs, man. We're going to do something later on, but they had this one song that was #1 back in 1978. Man, that thing was so hot. I don't care what kind of music you were listening to. When that song came on, everybody got up and started to move. It just had that type of groove. Nile Rodgers with that tink-a-tink-tink on that guitar and stuff like that. He laid it out there. And we're going to get into that tonight. We're going to get into exactly where that song came from and what it meant. Because strangely, it's not what you think it is. Now, it was a dance called a freak, and we'll get into that later on. But it's a little bit more to where this song actually came from. They didn't sit down just to write it. It came from an experience. And you hang around to the end, you'll find out what that experience was. I'm going to try to give you the whole story on what happened. So hang in there. Let's talk about Chic and how they got the world to say, freak out, in unison. It started in 1978 when the American music charts and scenes weren't a playground, they were a kingdom. And the king was none other than disco. Man, you couldn't escape it. The Bee Gees were everywhere. Donna Summer was untouchable. Gloria Gaynor, the Tramps, KC, and the Sunshine Band, they ruled the radio. Hey, 30 out of 52 weeks that year, disco sat at #1. It was complete domination. But the thing about domination, it always comes with rebellion. You see, the mirror ball was spinning, but underneath it, cracks were forming. Rock fans were angry. Punk was rising. A new wave of bands, Van Halen, the Cars, the Police, were all bubbling up, loud and ready to take back the stage that was lost. And the world outside the clubs wasn't calm either. The Camp David Accords were trying to bring peace to the Middle East. The Jonestown tragedy horrified the world. Heck, the first test tube baby was even born. Everything felt unstable, even music. And in the middle of all that, One Night of Rejection would create one of the biggest songs in music history. These guys, Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards, weren't just a band, they were engineers of rhythm. They took the pulse of R&B, wrapped it in high fashion sophistication, and built it like art. And their group Chic was a sound machine, precise, stylish, and unstoppable. Nile's guitar didn't play leads, it played language. Those sharp, syncopated chick-ah rhythms, that was his signature, clean-cutting like a heartbeat with attitude. And Bernard Edwards, his bass didn't just follow the beat, it commanded it. Melodic, bold, walking the line between jazz and funk. Together they built songs so tight you could bounce a quarter off them. By late 1977, Chic was rising fast. They were well respected, they were charting, and Rodgers and Edwards were getting noticed. And about this time, they were regularly out celebrating around town. Then came New Year's Eve night. Here's the scene outside the club. Rodgers and Edwards got invited by the famous Grace Jones to Studio 54, the most exclusive club in New York, the Temple of Disco. They show up, dressed for war in velvet and attitude, ready to party with Grace. So they passed on standing in the lines and headed to the back door, where they thought they'd get the VIP treatment. Not so fast, y'all.
So we kick back door because you got to be louder than the music inside, which was booming. And we say, hello, we're personal friends of Miss Grace Jones. And she said, to tell you that to let us in because we are probably going to produce our next record. And the guy just looked at us, slammed the door in our faces and went, oh, F off. And we went, no, 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 kick, bang, 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 bang. Then he came back and he said, didn't I tell you to F off?
Think about that. Two of the guys whose music defined the sound of that club turned away at the door. They had to take the walk of shame off into the freezing Manhattan night, angry, embarrassed, humiliated.
So we went to the corner and we had to pass a liquor store to get to my house. We bought 2 bottles of Dom Perignon. We used to call that rock and roll mouthwash.
Still ticked off, they went back to Nile's apartment, opened those bottles, and started taking it to the head, if you know what I'm talking about.
And I picked up my guitar and went, F off. F Studio 54. And my partner picks up his bass and starts jamming with me and go, F off. F Studio 54. F off.
As they were getting buzzed and being angry at the same time, the groove was raw, nasty, and tight. And out of that frustration came the beginnings of a future chant. Drunk as a skunk, they kept doing it over and over until they realized that they may have just created a hit song. So, as the night went on, they refined it, smoothed out the edges, but they knew they could never get those words on the radio. Therefore, they would have to come up with words they could actually say.
Freak out. We don't show you the...
And that was it, because they later realized that there was already a new dance the kids were doing at the time called the freak, and they were smart enough to take advantage and create a song to fit.
Have you heard about the new dance craze?
Crazy as it sounds, would become freak out.
It's called a freak. They're doing it night and day.
Then they added the French twist, les freak, in the words to give it that elegant international flavor. The result, a perfect storm of anger, genius, and groove. It was now ready. When Le Freak dropped in late 1978, it exploded. It didn't just hit number one, it stayed there for 5 weeks. As a kid then, I remember how crazy people went over it. It sold over 7 million copies, and it became the biggest single in the history of Atlantic Records.
Just come on down to the 54.
That's some wild stuff. The song that started with rejection outside a nightclub ended up becoming the anthem that defined it. It really put Studio 54 on the world map. But here's where it gets deep. Le Freak wasn't just another disco record. It was the whole genre's masterpiece. Every note was precise, every hit was calculated. It was disco at its peak, the absolute best argument for why the genre ever mattered. And at the same time, it was the beginning of the end, because the more perfect disco became, the more that people turned on it. Man, if you didn't know, a year later, disco sucks graffiti-covered walls, rock radio revolted. The sound that ruled the world was suddenly the sound to hate. So luckily, Chic had captured that final flash of disco brilliance, the top of the mountain before the collapse. And that's what makes this story worth telling. Because Le Freak wasn't just a hit, it got in just before the fall of disco music altogether. It was also proof that a rejection can easily turn into rocket fuel. Being turned away from the door can set off a night where you invent your own entrance. Chic created a groove that no matter who you were or what music you liked, you had no choice but to dance to it, because it was just funky. That's not just making music history, that's an innovative music mindset.
Hey, simply that, man. That song was hot, still is hot. I don't care, you go to a wedding, even to a funeral, you put that song on, people are going to start bobbing their head and tapping their toes. That song has a groove that says it all, man. It had that 70s vibe, but it surely still works today. Chic, Bernard Edwards, with Nile Rodgers. Niles is still around. Unfortunately, Bernard passed away a few years, but the song is going to be here forever, man. I tell you what. I hope you guys appreciate that on the Music Mindset channel, and make sure to check back. And like I say, support the channel so we can keep doing this.